Jerek never thought he would return to his grandmother's village, especially not alone. The place had always felt frozen in time, quiet, misty mornings, old wooden fences, and the constant smell of damp earth. Yet after her passing, the house became his. And with rent rising in the city, the decision was simple. Cheap, quiet, isolated. Perfect for starting over. Or so he thought. The moment he unlocked the creaking front door, cold air rushed out as if the house had been holding its breath. Every piece of furniture was exactly where his grandmother had left it. The crocheted carpets, the small wooden table, the old kettle on the stove that hadn't worked for years. He tried to shake off the uneasy feeling. "It's just an empty house," he muttered. That first night was calm. Too calm. Jerek unpacked his bags, made a small bed near the window, and tried to fall asleep. The darkness outside felt heavy, thicker than darkness should, but exhaustion pulled him under. The next morning began normally until the first strange sound echoed through the kitchen. A loud crash. He rushed in and saw a mug shattered on the floor. Not just fallen, a piece had flown under the table, another near the stove, like it had exploded midair. Jerek cleaned it up, trying to convince himself it must have been balancing on the counter edge, except he clearly remembered placing it in the middle. Later that day, he sat in the living room when a slow, painful creak came from behind him. The window latch twisted on its own, and the window opened inward, letting in a wave of icy wind. The sound was long and metallic, like someone dragging a rusted nail across old wood. He stood still, breath caught in his throat. "Old house," he whispered. "Just old hinges." But his voice didn't sound convinced. Night came early in the village. Around midnight, after hours of tossing and turning, Jerek felt something urge him to look outside. He slowly pulled the curtain aside and froze. Across the yard stood the abandoned house, his grandmother's old workshop. A faint, trembling candlelight glowed through its dusty window. And in front of the candle stood a silhouette. Hunched shoulders, thin neck, the shape of someone he knew too well. His grandmother. Her figure was motionless, facing him directly, as if watching him. Jerek's blood turned to ice. He stumbled backwards, dropped the curtain, and dove under his blanket, heart hammering. He didn't move, didn't breathe. The fear was overwhelming, smothering him until exhaustion finally made him slip into an uneasy sleep. That night he dreamed of her. She stood in the middle of a dark room, illuminated only by a flickering light. Her face was shadowed, but he could hear her whisper, trembling and urgent. "Jerek, I need to tell you." He woke up with a jerk, drenched in sweat. His hands were shaking as he got out of bed. He needed something warm, something normal, something real. The kitchen felt safer than the dark bedroom, so he lit the stove and put the old kettle on. The room filled with the soft hiss of heating metal. He stared at the wall, replaying the dream in his head. Her voice, the candle, the silhouette. "Maybe I'm just stressed," he whispered. When the kettle whistled, he poured himself a cup of tea, took a single sip, and felt his heartbeat slow a little. Routine helped. Warm tea helped. He went to the bathroom to splash cold water on his face, trying to wash off the panic that clung to him. But when he returned to the kitchen, something was wrong. The kettle wasn't where he left it. It was pushed aside, far from the stove, as if someone had intentionally moved it. Confused, he lifted his mug. Something dark stained the rim. His stomach tightened. Slowly, he tilted the cup. Inside wasn't tea. It was blood. Thick, dark, metallic-smelling blood filling the bottom half of the mug. Jerek dropped it instantly. It hit the counter with a dull thud, but didn't break. He stumbled backwards, nearly tripping over his own feet, breath coming out in sharp bursts. His hands trembled uncontrollably. "No, no, no, no," he whispered, voice shaking. "This can't be real." He grabbed his blanket from the couch, wrapped it tightly around himself like armor, and curled up in bed. He squeezed his eyes shut, forcing himself to sleep, desperate to escape whatever nightmare reality he had stepped into. When morning came, pale sunlight crept through the window. Jerek dragged himself into the kitchen, expecting to see the horrors of the night before. There was nothing. No blood, no moved kettle, no broken mug. Everything was clean, tidy, untouched. It was as if the night had been erased. "Did I dream all of it?" he whispered, but the fear in his chest felt too real to be imagined. Later that day, after pacing around the house for hours, he made a decision. He had to check the abandoned house, the workshop where he saw the silhouette. He had to know if something or someone was inside. He walked across the cold grass, each step heavier than the last. The window was dusty, the glass cracked. He leaned closer, wiping a small circle with his sleeve so he could see inside. But before he could look, a sharp voice yelled behind him. "Don't go in there! Nobody has lived there for 5 years!" Jerek smiled, and the road stopped. The neighbor wasn't a neighbor, it was his grandmother. Her pale, lifeless face stared directly at him. Her eyes were hollow, sunken. Her clothes were the same ones she had been buried in. A cold wave crashed over his body. His spine froze. His legs collapsed underneath him. The last thing he saw before everything went black was her face, expressionless, watching him fall. He woke up in a hospital bed, bright white lights burning his eyes. A doctor spoke gently, telling him he had been found unconscious outside his house. His family visited, worried and confused. Jerek told them everything, every detail, every sound, every vision. But nobody believed him. They blamed stress, grief, exhaustion. They said he imagined it all. They said old houses make strange noises. But Jerek knew the truth. Something in that village had worn his grandmother's face. Something had watched him from the window. Something had followed him into the kitchen. Something had tried to speak to him in his dreams. And whatever it wasn't human. Jerek never returned to that village again. The house stayed empty, slowly rotting into the earth. Windows growing dusty, walls cracking, the yard overgrown. But some nights, villagers whispered about a faint candlelight glowing in the abandoned workshop, and a silhouette standing perfectly still, watching, waiting for someone to come back.